The sun had barely peeked over the horizon when John stepped outside his modest suburban home, savoring the calm of another ordinary morning in Willow Creek Estates. The manicured lawns shimmered with dew. Birds chirped softly in the towering oaks, and neighbors exchanged polite waves as they went about their routines. It was the kind of neighborhood where doors stayed unlocked, and conflicts were whispered behind trimmed hedges, not shouted across fences. But today, something was terribly wrong. John's heartbeat quickened as he approached his black SUV parked in the driveway. His gaze dropped to the tires. All four of them were shredded, sidewalls torn ragged, rubber shredded into tufts like a wild animal had clawed through them. The harsh scent of burnt rubber filled the morning air. His chest tightened as a cold wave of suspicion crept in. How could this happen? John muttered, kneeling to examine the damage. This wasn't a random vandalism, it was personal. But who would want to mess with him? And why? He glanced up, scanning the quiet street. The neighbors' windows were shuttered, and the usual hum of morning activity was strangely absent. Something had changed. Someone wanted this to be a secret. John's mind raced back to the last HOA meeting, a stormy affair where Karen Matthews, the neighborhood's notoriously strict and sharp-tongued HOA board member, had singled him out. She'd barked orders, complaining about the placement of his truck near her property line, accusing him of breaking the community's delicate balance. Karen's reputation in Willow Creek was as fierce as it was feared. She was known for wielding the HOA's rules like weapons, ready to pounce on any perceived slight. Some admired her dedication to order. Others whispered about her vindictive streak. John had tried to stay out of her way, but maybe that wasn't enough. He pulled out his phone and tapped the security camera app. Earlier that week, fed up with minor disputes, John had secretly installed a small weatherproof camera tucked near the garage eaves. He hoped it would be a deterrent, not a necessity. The footage played, a dimly lit night scene showing the empty driveway under the flickering streetlight. Then a shadow appeared. John's pulse quickened as the figure moved deliberately, crouching by the tires. The grainy image showed a woman's silhouette, long hair tied back, a familiar purposeful stride. His breath caught. It was Karen. She was handling something small and sharp, crouching low and working quickly, her face obscured by darkness. Then the footage stuttered and flickered, an eerie glitch that cut off the most damning moment. John stared at the frozen frame, mind swirling with questions. Had Karen really done this? Was it possible she'd gone this far to intimidate him, or was someone else trying to frame her? The silence of the neighborhood suddenly felt oppressive, as if eyes watched from every window and every tree. The peaceful image of Willow Creek Estates shattered. What had started as a simple parking spat was now a dangerous game, and John was in the middle of it. He quickly backed up the footage, heart pounding. The stakes had just risen beyond HOA disagreements. This was criminal. As the morning sun climbed higher, John felt a chilling certainty. Karen wasn't just a harsh rule enforcer, she was someone who could take things too far. And if he didn't act fast, things could get much worse. His phone buzzed. A message from a neighbor. "Saw Karen sneaking around last night. Be careful." John swallowed hard. In a neighborhood built on trust, the rules had been broken, and now the fight for justice was about to begin. The morning light revealed every detail of John's shredded tires in stark clarity, but it did nothing to ease the gnawing unease in his chest. He paced his driveway, replaying the grainy footage again and again, each time more convinced that Karen Matthews was the person lurking in the shadows that night. But why? What could have pushed her from fierce HOA enforcer to criminal saboteur? John's thoughts drifted back to the countless HOA meetings over the past year, the sharp exchanges, the whispered glances, the escalating tension. It wasn't just about parking anymore. Karen had taken it personally. There had been small, almost imperceptible signs before. The anonymous letters slipped under his door, accusing him of breaking community rules he never knew existed. The subtle glances, from neighbors who once smiled but now avoided eye contact. Even his mail had been mysteriously delayed. It felt like an invisible war was raging, one John hadn't fully noticed until now. In the days after the tire incident, rumors began to swirl. The neighborhood grapevine, usually a gentle murmur, grew into a low roar of speculation. Some whispered about Karen's tough love approach. Others suggested darker motives. John overheard a few neighbors mention how Karen had clashed with several residents lately, hinting she wasn't just enforcing rules, she was settling scores, driven. By a mixture of fear and resolve, John decided to dig deeper. Late one afternoon, he struck up a conversation with his neighbor, Helen, an elderly woman with a keen eye and years of HOA experience. "Helen, have you noticed anything unusual with Karen lately, or with anyone else?" John asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Helen hesitated, eyes darting around nervously. "You're not the only one, John. I've seen her take a particular interest in you. But it's more than that. She's been harsh on others, too. There was that couple from the west side, had a big fight about their garden. Then the Martins, with their mailbox. It's like she's hunting for reasons to punish people." John's jaw tightened. "Do you think she'd go this far? To sabotage someone's property?" Helen nodded slowly. "I wouldn't put it past her. Karen's pride is fragile, and when she feels threatened, she doesn't back down." That night, John couldn't shake the feeling that Karen's actions were just the surface of something much deeper. The tension in the neighborhood had been simmering quietly, but now it boiled dangerously close to the surface. Back inside his house, John sat staring at the security footage once more. There was a lingering question he couldn't answer. Was Karen acting alone? The footage showed only one figure that night, but John had learned to trust that where there was smoke, there was often fire. He wondered if Karen had allies in the HOA, neighbors who shared her hardline views, or worse, who might have helped her. His phone buzzed again, a text from another neighbor, Mark. "I think you should check the bushes near your driveway. Found something odd there last night." Curious and apprehensive, John grabbed a flashlight and headed outside. In the dim glow, tangled in the shrubbery near the curb, he found a small, black object, a box cutter, its blade slick with what looked like fresh dirt. He carefully bagged the evidence, his hands trembling. John's mind raced. Whoever planted this weapon had wanted to be sure John found it, either as a warning or a clue. But from whom? And why? He was starting to see the full picture. Karen's fury was a symptom of a much larger, shadowy conflict gripping the neighborhood. A fight not just over lawn decorations or parking spaces, but over power, control, and fear. With the evidence mounting and the mystery deepening, John knew one thing, for sure. This wasn't just an HOA dispute anymore. It was a battle for the soul of Willow Creek Estates. And it was only just beginning. John sat at his kitchen table, the glow of his laptop illuminating his tired face in the dim evening. The grainy footage from his security camera played on repeat, but tonight he was no longer just watching. He was scrutinizing every second, searching for anything he might have missed. The moment when Karen's silhouette crouched near his tires, an image burned into his memory, was now blurred and corrupted, as if the camera itself didn't want the truth revealed. He had noticed it earlier, a sudden glitch, a static-filled frame that sliced off the most crucial seconds. It was as if someone had tampered with the footage. But who? And how? Frustration bubbled beneath his calm exterior. He wasn't a tech expert, but the idea that evidence might be erased or hidden terrified him. He needed help. He dialed the number of his neighbor Simon, a young IT consultant who had recently moved in and had a reputation for digital wizardry. Simon, it's John. I need your help. The footage from my security camera, it's been corrupted or maybe tampered with. I think someone doesn't want me to see the whole thing. Simon's voice was calm but curious. Send it over. I'll see what I can do. Within minutes, Simon was working through encrypted files, bypassing glitches and running recovery programs. John watched nervously as the data churned on the screen. Give me a few hours, Simon said. There's a chance we can recover deleted segments or hidden files. Sometimes cameras record more than just what you see on the surface. The waiting stretched long into the night. John's mind churned with worst-case scenarios. What if Karen wasn't the only one involved? What if this went beyond petty HOA disputes? Suddenly, his phone vibrated. Simon's message flashed on the screen. Got something. Meet me tomorrow. Urgent. The next afternoon, John arrived at Simon's. House heart-pounding. Simon ushered him into a cramped office cluttered with monitors and gadgets. Look at this, Simon said, playing a recovered video file. The footage showed the driveway again, the time-stamp marking the late hour. But now, the corrupted segment had been restored, a clearer view of Karen crouching next to the tires. She pulled out a small box from her bag, carefully placing something sharp beneath the rubber. Her face was still obscured by shadows, but her posture and movements were unmistakable. Then something else caught John's eye, a flash of movement from the corner of the frame. A second figure, brief, silent, almost ghost-like, stood watching. Karen, hidden behind a nearby tree, John's blood ran cold. Someone had been there with her. But who? And why was this person hiding in the shadows? Did the camera catch anything else? John asked, voice tight. Simon shook his head. No, the second person disappears after a few seconds. Whoever it was, they were careful. John sat back, overwhelmed by the implications. The sabotage was no longer just a one-woman act. There was a shadowy accomplice, someone who wanted to keep their distance, but who was very much part of the plan. He realized the stakes had just escalated. This was not simply about an angry HOA board member. This was a coordinated attack, and the mystery deepened. John's phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. Stop digging, John. Some truths are better left buried. A cold shiver ran down his spine. The warning was clear, but John's resolve hardened. He couldn't back down now. The night stretched on, each tick of the clock amplifying his fear and determination, because someone in Willow Creek Estates was hiding secrets darker than anyone imagined, and John was dangerously close to uncovering them. The weekly HOA meeting was supposed to be a routine affair, budget updates, landscaping schedules, and the usual gentle reminders about trash day. But tonight, the room buzzed with an electricity far from ordinary. Word of the tire-slicing incident had spread like wildfire, and the crowd had swollen, murmuring anxiously as they settled into folding chairs arranged in the community centers. Fluorescent glow. John's palms were slick with sweat as he clutched a flash drive containing the recovered footage. He scanned the room. Faces he recognized. Friends, neighbors, acquaintances, mixed with strangers drawn by curiosity or concern. At the far end, standing rigid in her usual sharp blazer and icily perfect posture, was Karen Matthews, her eyes locked onto John's with an unsettling intensity. The HOA president called the meeting to order, but the formalities dissolved almost immediately as John stood, voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. I have something the community needs to see, John announced, stepping forward. He inserted the flash drive into the projector. The flickering screen showed the familiar grainy image, then the restored footage, revealing Karen crouching by his tires, planting the sharp objects. A hush fell over the room. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line, her jaw tightening. This is fabricated, she spat, voice sharp as a razor. A crude attempt to ruin my reputation. John held her gaze. The footage is real. And I'm not the only one affected by your vendetta. The room shifted, whispers rising like a tide. Karen's eyes narrowed. You have your own motives, John. Maybe this is retaliation for a complaint I made. You've never been a perfect neighbor. Murmurs turned into heated exchanges. The line between truth and rumor blurred as neighbors voiced fractured opinions. Some sided with Karen, emphasizing her contributions to community safety and order. Others, emboldened by John's courage, demanded accountability. Suddenly, Karen's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, loud enough for only a few near her to hear. You don't know what you're getting into. Keep poking around, and there will be consequences. John's heart thudded. The veiled threat sent a ripple of unease through the crowd. The HOA president struggled to restore calm, but failed. The meeting fractured into chaotic debates, neighbors divided, friendships strained. Afterward, John found himself cornered by a group of residents, some supportive, others skeptical. John, be careful, an elderly woman warned. Karen has influence. She's not afraid to use it. John nodded, tension knotting his stomach. Karen wasn't just an antagonist, she was a force to reckon with. As he left the building, John caught Karen's eyes once more. Her icy stare promised a battle, far from over. Walking home beneath the streetlights, John's mind raced. The evidence was on his side, but the fight for justice wasn't just about facts. It was about navigating a web of power, fear, and hidden alliances. He realized that in Willow Creek Estates, peace was a fragile illusion, and beneath the manicured, lawns lay secrets waiting to unravel, and with every step, John knew the neighborhood's shadows were closing in. The days following the explosive HOA meeting felt like a slow unraveling for John. The neighborhood that once felt like home now seemed charged with hidden eyes and hushed whispers. Every glance from a passing neighbor carried suspicion. Every doctor left slightly ajar felt like an invitation to unseen dangers. John's phone buzzed constantly, texts and calls from worried neighbors, friends urging caution, but also ominous messages from unknown numbers that sent chills down his spine. Stop now or regret it. You're meddling where you don't belong. It wasn't just Karen anymore. Someone else was watching, waiting in the shadows. One evening, as John walked home from the grocery store, the crunch of footsteps behind him quickened his pulse. He turned abruptly, but the street was empty. A cold draft whispered through the trees, and John hurried inside, locking every door and window behind him. He realized he was alone in this fight, more isolated than ever. The HOA board members had started to distance themselves, sending carefully worded emails that emphasized neutrality but avoided mentioning Karen or the sabotage. The president, who had once offered polite support, now dodged John's calls. John's best ally was Simon, who had spent countless hours analyzing the footage and digital files. Over coffee one afternoon, Simon warned, "John, this isn't just a personal feud. Whoever's behind this has resources. They're covering their tracks." John's hands trembled as he looked around the quiet cafe. Why would the HOA protect Karen? She's the one who ruined my car. Simon leaned in, voice low. Sometimes the people you see aren't the ones pulling the strings. Karen could be a pawn in something bigger. John's mind reeled. Could there be deeper corruption in the HOA? Had Karen been acting on orders? Or was she a wild card, and others were now trying to clean up the mess? He decided to visit the local police station, hoping to file a formal report. But the officer on duty was dismissive, suggesting the damage was a civil matter better handled within the community. Without clear proof, it's tough to press charges, the officer said, barely glancing at John's security footage. Frustrated and feeling powerless, John left with a sinking heart. The system he hoped would protect him seemed indifferent, and the neighborhood he loved was quietly turning against him. That night, a new message appeared on his phone. "We know what you're doing. Back off. Or next time, it won't be just." Tires. John's breath caught. The threat was unmistakable now. Someone was willing to escalate. He thought of Karen's icy glare at the meeting, her whispered warning. But now it wasn't just Karen. This was something darker, something calculated. In the days that followed, strange things began happening around John's property. Footprints in the garden at dawn, his mailbox rifled through, and eerie noises. Outside his window late at night, John installed more cameras, but paranoia gnawed at him. Who was watching? Who was waiting? The neighborhood's serene surface had cracked, revealing dangerous undercurrents that John was barely beginning to understand. He wasn't just fighting for justice anymore, he was fighting for survival. And, as the shadows lengthened over Willow Creek Estates, John knew the coming days would test him in ways he never imagined. John barely slept that night. Every creak of the house made his heart jump. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. The ominous messages had stopped, for now, but the silence only felt heavier. He knew the calm was temporary. The next morning a knock came at his door. He opened it cautiously, finding an elderly man with silver hair and a kind but serious expression. The man introduced himself as Mr. Turner, a longtime resident who had stayed mostly quiet during neighborhood disputes. "I've been watching," Mr. Turner said quietly. "I don't agree with what's happening to you. Karen's behavior isn't normal, but you're up against something bigger than just a few bad apples." John invited him inside, desperate for any ally. Turner explained he had seen Karen meeting with a shadowy group of people at odd hours. They weren't official HOA members, but they held sway over many decisions behind the scenes. "They call themselves the Guardians of Willow Creek," Turner said. "A secret faction controlling the neighborhood, deciding who can live here and who can't, enforcing rules by any means necessary." John's mind reeled. A secret faction? It sounded like something out of a thriller. But his experiences had already stretched the limits of belief. Turner reached into his jacket and handed John a worn envelope. Inside were photos of Karen meeting with several men in dark suits, some exchanging envelopes. "This is proof," Turner said. "If we can show this to the authorities, it could bring down the entire corrupt system." John felt a spark of hope, but also a deepening fear. If Karen and her faction were willing to sabotage his car, what lengths would they go to protect their secrets? Later that day, John and Simon reviewed the photos and the security footage side by side. The technology expert pointed out subtle clues. A certain logo on a man's jacket. A pattern of visits near the community center. "This is bigger than we thought," Simon said gravely. "And we're stepping into dangerous territory." Suddenly, John's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The screen showed a blocked number. "John," a distorted voice whispered, "stop digging or face the consequences." Before John could respond, the line went dead. The threat was unmistakable. But now, armed with new evidence and an unexpected ally, John felt he couldn't back down. He looked at Turner and Simon, determination hardening in his eyes. "This ends now," he said. As night fell over Willow Creek Estates, John realized the battle for his neighborhood was far from over. But with the truth on his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. The tension in Willow Creek Estates had reached a boiling point. John felt the weight of every suspicious glance and whispered conversation pressing down on him like a storm cloud. But he was no longer alone. Mr. Turner's evidence and Simon's digital expertise had given him a weapon in this battle against the shadowy faction controlling the HOA. John arranged a meeting with the local police detective, a skeptical but professional woman named Detective Ramirez. He knew that convincing law enforcement to act would be difficult, but he had to try. As he handed over the photos and the recovered footage, Detective Ramirez's eyes narrowed in thought. "This looks serious," she admitted. "If there's a secret faction coercing residents and sabotaging property, it's beyond a simple HOA dispute. We'll need to investigate." John felt a flicker of hope. The following days were a blur of interviews, police questioning, and discreet surveillance. But the faction wasn't going down without a fight. One evening, as John returned home from a meeting with Detective Ramirez, his car suddenly stalled. The engine sputtered and died, an eerily familiar feeling. Before he could react, a black SUV blocked his path, its windows tinted too dark to see inside. The door opened, and Karen Matthews stepped out, flanked by two stern-looking men. "John," she said, voice cold and sharp, "you should have stopped when you had the chance." He held his ground. "I'm not afraid of you." Karen smiled thinly. "You should be." Suddenly, the two men lunged forward, grabbing John's arms. He struggled, adrenaline surging. Just as the situation seemed dire, headlights flooded the street. Detective Ramirez and several officers emerged from their vehicles, weapons drawn. "Let him go," Ramirez commanded. Karen's face twisted with fury, but she backed down, signaling her men to release John. The police moved swiftly, arresting Karen and the men for intimidation, vandalism, and conspiracy. As the officers led Karen away, she shot John a final, venomous glare. "You think this ends here?" she spat. "There are others who won't let you ruin everything." John's chest tightened. He knew the fight wasn't over, but tonight, justice had taken a small step forward. The neighborhood gathered outside, some cheering cautiously, others whispering anxiously. John looked around at the faces, some filled with relief, others with uncertainty. He realized that Willow Creek Estates was scarred, but perhaps finally, healing could begin. The air in Willow Creek Estates felt lighter the next morning, but the calm was fragile, like the quiet before a storm. Karen's arrest had rocked the community, her secrets exposed in the harsh light of day. Yet as John walked through the neighborhood, he noticed subtle changes, not just relief, but a ripple of unease beneath the surface. At the precinct, Detective Ramirez handed John a thick file. "We're building a case against the so-called Guardians, but these things run deep. Karen was only the tip of the iceberg." John nodded, the weight of the fight settling heavily on his shoulders. Returning home, he noticed his security system was offline, his cameras dead. A new message flickered on his phone. "You won today, but the game isn't over." A chill ran through him. Determined, John reached out to Simon and Mr. Turner. Together, they combed through the HOA's records and uncovered financial irregularities, secret meetings and hidden agendas buried under layers of false documents. The Guardians weren't just a faction. They were a network, a covert syndicate with tendrils reaching beyond the neighborhood. Then came the shock. A trusted HOA board member, one of the earliest to dismiss John's claims, was tied to offshore accounts linked to the group. The betrayal cut deep. John realized that while Karen had been bold and reckless, the true power players had been hiding in plain sight. As the investigation widened, some neighbors expressed fear, others rage. The community fractured further, but John's resolve only strengthened. Late one evening, John received an unexpected visit. A woman he didn't recognize slipped an envelope through his door and vanished into the night. Inside were documents implicating a major local developer in the conspiracy, plans to buy out homes, evict residents, and reshape the neighborhood for profit. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, revealing a web of greed and corruption that stretched far beyond the tire-slicing incident. John's fight was no longer just personal. It was a battle to save his home and community from destruction. Yet amidst the chaos, a new determination took root. Willow Creek Estates might be scarred, but its spirit was unbroken. John looked out over the familiar streets, knowing that the road ahead would be long and uncertain. But with truth as his weapon and neighbors slowly rallying behind him, he was ready for whatever came next. Because in the shadows of the neighborhood's darkest secrets, a brighter future was waiting to be forged, and John would be there to fight for it.